Our first speaker this morning is the mayor of the city of Chicago. There are a few things I'd like to share with you about our next speaker. The City Club of Chicago is enormously grateful to him and his wife Amy for, number one, visiting and speaking at Misericordia and Special Olympics events, and two, encouraging everyone to give back to their community in the same rich measure which we've all received. The City Club of Chicago proudly takes partial credit for our part in the fabulous publicity which our next speaker earned by joining us at the Special Olympics Chicago Polar Plunge last year, where he invited Jimmy Fallon and helped raise $1.2 million for children and adults with special needs. Our next speaker is frequent attendance at City Club of Chicago events and encouraging his top commissioners, like today, to speak is deeply appreciated. Ladies and gentlemen, the Mayor of the City of Chicago, Mayor Rahm Emanuel. Mayor?
Thank you, Jay. You know, I'm going to have to do that polar plunge one more time just so the introduction stays fresh all the time, Jay. First of all, I want to thank everybody for being here. Ginger, I know you're new to Chicago. I want you to know these people usually do not get up except for about 11:30 before lunch. So this is very, very unusual that this happened. But you'll know that. Before I introduce Ginger, I do want to introduce three people that are key people in her team. First, Michael Boland, who is, Michael, can you stand here? Mike. While I was looking for a commissioner, Mike kept everything moving at O'Hare, and if your flight was delayed, that was Mike's problem. If it was on time, I would just like to say, you're welcome. Aaron Mackey is Aaron here? There's Aaron. And is Erin O'Donnell here also? No, Erin's not here. She's also at Midway, Michael's counterpart at Midway Airport. I do want to, there's kind of like a joke there. Erin O'Donnell, Aaron Mackey, Michael Boland. If you're not Irish, don't apply. Don't worry. Okay, everybody relax, all right? My son's middle name is Ireland. I can get away with that. That is a true story, first of all. Let me say something. I'm very proud that Ginger's here. On a personal note also, when Ginger decided to take the job, etc., unfortunately her husband was in an accident on the street as a pedestrian, and she has not missed a beat at job, but she's also, I've told her when that happened, I want you to take as much time with your husband as possible, and please make sure that he is good. And I hope everybody helps her in that effort, and I thank you, Ginger, for your professionalism and your commitment both to family and work. You're supposed to, give her an applause there, right? Okay. Let me say, Ginger is exceptional on a lot of levels. And one, when you look at her energy when she comes up here, you'll realize I'm calm and steady from now on. I hired her for that purpose. But on a serious note, one of the key ideas, in my view, for Chicago was when Richard J. Daley decided to make O'Hare the airport for the city of Chicago. When you think of Chicago as a global city, O'Hare and Midway are a key part of that strategy. In the last 2 years, the city of Chicago was #1 city for corporate relocations. City of Chicago, since the height of the recession, had the biggest drop of unemployment of any city in America. Out of the 10 major metropolitan areas last year, Chicagoland, or the area of Chicago, had 12,000 businesses created number 2 in the United States. Our ability to attract both the talent and the businesses is because O'Hare and Midway, obviously at one level, are about getting you from point A to point B, weather permitting, and that's something I've asked Ginger to work on. But on an essential level, it's more than that, because O'Hare is more than aviation, more than getting you from point A to B. It is an economic engine for the city of Chicago. And I said when I was looking for a commissioner, and the reason I asked Ray LaHood and others to be part of a task force to find and identify the next person, is because I wanted to professionalize the operations of O'Hare and Midway and see them from the lens of not only operating a business, but as a key part of the economic strategy for the city of Chicago. She not only takes over now the busiest airport in America, her task is to make it the best airport in America. And I see that what we've done on the international terminal at O'Hare as a template of what we want to do throughout the airport system and aviation system in the city of Chicago. It is not only one of the busiest from a commuter standpoint. About 1/3 of China's air cargo comes into O'Hare. And so from both commuter to cargo, O'Hare and Midway play a central role not only in the nation and international economy, obviously play a central role in the city of Chicago. About 550,000 jobs depend on the aviation system in the city of Chicago. I've given her the task of taking a great airport, not only making it greater, but laying the foundation for Chicago's economic growth for the next 40 years. The decisions she makes, both in modernizing the terminals, making sure our routes stay competitive, and making sure that we can get from anywhere here in the United States, anywhere here in North America, and anywhere from here to the world, and anywhere from the world to the city of Chicago. We'll continue to make sure that Chicago stays as a central transportation and economic hub for the world economy. Her task is daunting. On the other hand, we are fortunate of somebody who's also up to the challenge and has come here. One of the main efforts, besides modernizing our terminals, modernizing our routes, modernizing the operations of the system, and bringing O'Hare and Midway into the 21st century, is also, I've given her the task in which she's uniquely qualified, is modernizing our way we get from where we are to our airports. I believe it's time for Chicago now to build high-speed rail to O'Hare. And the idea that we can take 15 minutes or 10 minutes off that ride, have an experience, will put Chicago where other international major airports are. And it will continue to seal and secure Chicago's it will seal Chicago's position in the national and global economy, and continue to enable Chicago to secure businesses and operations to come here. When you put the fact that the city of Chicago is the #1 city for kids coming out of college to start their career in the United States, this time of year, 150,000 freshly minted 4-year college degrees land in the city. According to Accenture, that's the #1 city in America kids start. We're the #1 city, according to Bloomberg, in the sense of cost of living for the millennials. When you put that, the race for talent, with the fact that our airport system and aviation system allows you to get anywhere in the world or anywhere in North America conveniently, those two pieces, plus our transparency and I believe a unique culture of public and private investment, secure Chicago's economy in both creating businesses, expanding businesses, and creating jobs and economic opportunity. We had nobody better at having searched across the United States to help us build the Chicago of the 21st century than Ginger Evans.
Good morning. I'm delighted to be at City Club. I've been here 3.5 weeks, and I've been to the Auditorium Theater, the Court Theater at the University of Chicago, a blues festival, the Art Institute, the Riverwalk. I went to a Cubs game last night, and too many amazing restaurants to mention. However, I've been told that you're not really a true Chicago policy wonk until you've attended a City Club event. So today, After 30 years working in a wide variety of public and private sector positions focused on engineering and aviation and commercial, friends and colleagues asked me, why Chicago? Why now? You were comfortably settled in Washington. And there's a couple of compelling reasons that I hope will underscore everything that the mayor just said. The top of the list is, it's Chicago. I mean, the search committee asked me, they said, why would you do this? It's Chicago. I mean, it's absolutely one of the greatest cities in the world. Everybody in this room already knows this. I mean, the mayor just ticked off everything that's happening now. But for me, as a student of history, the architecture, the culture, your championship sports teams, it's always been this icon. And I grew up in the Midwest, and I never heard of New York growing up. I always heard about Chicago. That's where my grandfather brought his cattle on the train to sell them, and it's where my mother came to the merchandise mart to buy Levi's and Stetson hats to bring home to sell in the family store. So it's always been this kind of city on the hill for me. I'm delighted to have met with World Business Chicago. I mean, they're clearly doing a great job attracting major corporations, and so it's Chicago. And I'm told that this group has a short attention span, and I'm supposed to, not speak for very long. But I do want to go off message for just a moment. I was reminded of it last night coming home from Wrigley Field. When I got the call, are you interested in doing this? For me, in big projects, I've seen more of them that don't happen than do happen. And the key difference is the leadership. And, I'd meet with these business leaders, and they'd say, we got to do this, we got to do that. And I'd say, I've been here for 2 days, where's your mayor? If your mayor's in a comfortable spot and he's not engaged, this project isn't going to happen. And that's true, around the world. And so, the only thing I knew about Mayor Emanuel was I had read about, there was a very detailed profile of him in the New York Times Sunday magazine when he was chief of staff in the White House. And I at the time remember thinking, God, this is an amazing guy. I mean, this is a guy who knows how to get things done. And then I looked at, some of the coverage from the election, and I could, I was like, yeah, this is a guy who's really trying to do the right thing. This is a kind of a person who can get things done. And so my little voice has always guided me well in my career. It's usually right. But I had been here after I accepted the job, and I heard from all my friends, and they said, oh my God, he's intense, he's hard to work for. And I'm thinking, well, that's kind of like me, But the first Friday I was here, my Peter had gone home to recover in Arlington, so I was here alone. It was Friday night, looking for something to do. So Cornel West was speaking at the Auditorium Theater, and I've read about the guy all my life. So I thought, well, I'll go hear him speak. It was a justice conference. Amazing, philosophical and spiritual, thought leader. I mean, just an amazing man. And he spoke for an hour without notes. And I walked out of there. It was this gorgeous Chicago night. Of course, you're right there. It's Grant Park. And I thought, there was one thing he said that really resonated with me. And he said, if you have love for mankind, it shouldn't be, love isn't a comfortable thing like Hallmark thinks you. It's just this fuzzy, soft, warm thing. Love should make you uncomfortable. It should make you a warrior because of all the injustice that you see around you. Your love should make you uncomfortable. And I walked out of there and I thought, that's the mayor. He's intense because he cares so much. That's where that intensity comes from. And so to me, that was the ultimate validation for my decision. And then to finish, so again, I'm here by myself. The championship game is playing. We don't have any furniture yet. So I go down in the little business center, and there's this little TV up in the corner, and in a dark corner, and I'm watching it by myself. It's dark and quiet. I don't know anything about hockey, but it's pretty amazing. And that second shot where he did the pass, and I was like, oh my God, strategy, teamwork, skill, unbelievable. I looked at that. I thought that was just the most amazing thing. And then I saw they had the big parade, and there was a sea of red, and there's the mayor. So you can see his silver head, and he had on this silver T-shirt with this, warrior on the front. And I thought, that's it. He's the silver warrior. And so I'm all in, Mayor. I'm telling you, I'm all in. So, I think I'd like to think I have some of those characteristics, and I think I'm going to need them because at the core, I came to Chicago because I like to tackle big, gnarly challenges. I did this in Denver, where I was part of a team that built an entirely new airport with the largest, most technologically advanced and efficient airfield in the world. And again in Washington, D.C., where I worked with a legal team to create a structure that allowed construction of rail to Dulles International Airport, the first ever airport to receive funds from a Federal Transit Association. All the pundits said that neither of those could be done. Where others see risk, I see opportunity, and that sums up my entire career. Make no mistake about it, commercial aviation in Chicago needs a strong leader who's ready to face major challenges, challenges which, if unmet, will threaten our city's continuing dynamic growth, prosperity, and global reputation. And I'm going to discuss some of these challenges in a few moments. Lastly, I moved to Chicago to be the aviation commissioner because I'm clear-eyed about the challenges, but I sense enormous opportunity. The opportunity to reestablish Chicago's primacy and future as one of the most important and successful airports anywhere in the world. And I hope that as a result of today's presentation, you're going to see and be excited about these opportunities, because it's going to take our collective vision, planning, hard work, collaboration, investment, and a touch of boldness for us to take full advantage of them. So in thinking about how to respond to the challenges and opportunities, a good place to start is to ask the fundamental question: what defines success when it comes to airports? And these days the answer is actually pretty simple. To be competitive, you need to address two key factors. First, it's imperative to maximize capacity in all the system's components: infrastructure, runways, terminals, and gates. We quite simply need to be equipped to manage the demand for bigger planes and more carriers to accommodate more passengers traveling to more destinations, both domestic and particularly international. And equally important is the customer experience, so that consumers, and note I say consumers because these days accessibility, reliability, and safety are table stakes. Travelers also are seeking robust and attractive retail, dining, technology, and transit options. So to be a global airport leader and a hub of choice, to be competitive in today's commercial aviation sector, you need to be able to offer both capacity and customer experience at a 21st century level. And by those standards, I'm sorry to say that Chicago is actually starting to fall behind. And unless we want to lose the economic advantage that being a world-class aviation hub provides, we need to make a commitment to catching up and taking the lead, and I mean now. We have 4 years. Some of you may be wondering how it happened that Chicago's busy and profitable airports are lagging our domestic and international counterparts. And this is where it's helpful to revisit some history. Back in the late 40s and 50s, Chicago was among a number of cities that capitalized on the post-World War II boom by investing in building world-class airports. Others who caught this wave included London, New York City, Los Angeles, and Miami. At that time, Chicago's Midway Airport was the world's busiest airport, but city leaders made a shrewd decision to leverage Chicago's historic role as a transportation leader, as well as its superb geographic location, dynamic business environment, and robust workforce, to invest in the economic growth of the region. They made an incredibly bold move, some would say risky, to secure a large site far removed from the city center so that a commercial aviation could evolve and grow. And it was thought that this size and location were so vast that there couldn't possibly be any limits to growth. And for a long time, that proved to be the case. So when I grew up in aviation, it was all about Chicago. Chicago was the leader for decades, an early leader and an innovator in aviation. O'Hare was the first airport in the world to utilize converging arrival streams to allow for triple approaches in good weather and dual approaches to accommodate air travel, even in poor weather. We had the tallest air traffic control tower in the world, which led to our having the first automated radar system. Indeed, back then, every time Boeing developed a bigger airplane, Chicago built a longer runway. That's how we did it. That's how we got here. Chicago started and stayed ahead of the market by making strategic investments to grow, even when we were already in the market leader. I can't believe some of the questions I'm getting asked today. Why do we need a longer runway? That's not the question that Chicago asks. So as the decades went on and this economic prosperity became, pretty famous, some of the other legacy airports began to grow and thrive. Other U.S. cities began to sit up and take note. They wanted a piece of the action because they saw how a robust commercial aviation hub contributed to economic development, job growth, and quality of life. Washington, D.C., Dallas, and Denver are great examples of cities that at that time had small, close-in airports. Soon, all of them followed Chicago's example and moved to bigger sites farther from the city center, where they invested in building smartly designed modern airports that had the capacity to grow as their market share evolved. Since then, we've seen similar growth and investment in airport facilities here in the U.S., Dallas, Fort Worth, and Atlanta, as well as overseas in Dubai and Singapore, where the airports are virtually a small city with their own robust economy and amenities that make travelers want to spend time there. Now, let me talk about Denver for a minute. You all know I was the chief engineer there and later the aviation director. I can tell you that when we started to plan our new airport, the first thing we did was to go get the world's best expertise in aviation. And where do we get it? We came to Chicago, and we hired all your consultants. But we also scanned the entire commercial airport landscape to determine what we needed to do and stay competitive. So we borrowed the highly efficient roadway corridor concept from Dulles. We duplicated the highly efficient linear concourse layout from Atlanta, only bigger. And then we placed a big old target on Chicago's mid-continent hub traffic by building 6 very long runways with wide spacing, an incredibly large and efficient airfield. That's how you start. Because of that design, FAA rewarded Denver by installing the most updated instrumentation so that DIA could accommodate the first triple IFR landings in the world. So travelers today no longer avoid Denver during the winter, as they did for a long time. Denver got that triple IFR capability in 1994. When did O'Hare get it? We got it nearly 20 years later when we opened a new runway, runway 10C. No longer the leader. Denver was the first airport to get all next-gen capability from the FAA. You cannot put these new systems in your grandmother's control tower. So that modernization is key to advanced technology such as aviation needs. And the other point I wanted to make was, look at that bottom slide. Since DIA opened 20 years ago, they've gone from 34 million passengers to 53 million passengers. Denver is a city of 2 million people. United used to say to me, Ginger, you're not Chicago. Chicago's 9 million people. You guys are a million and a half. What are you talking about? Where did that 53 million passengers come from? I'm telling you, a lot of that is mid-continent hubbing traffic that they took from O'Hare because they had the capacity and we didn't. I'm telling you, I did it. I did it on purpose. So, kind of an earthquake. Denver wasn't the only one up in its competitive game. Atlanta targeted O'Hare by reconfiguring their airfield and terminal into a linear parallel configuration. Linear parallel configuration. Referred to at the time as the airport designed by the airlines. It was extremely modest architecturally. They didn't even put in moving sidewalks. But it was extremely and enormously efficient for aircraft operations. Hold that thought. This is an important lesson for our future. We must be efficient for aircraft operations. While all that was happening around the country, things started to pull down in Chicago as the FAA imposed flight restrictions on O'Hare's 2 runways from 3 directions airfield. That's what we had. Simply put, the FAA does not mess around when it comes to what it considers safe airport operations. In order to control delay while maintaining safe operations, the FAA intervened to cap operations at O'Hare. Cap means you're done. Originally, the restrictions placed on O'Hare to ease delay were meant to be temporary, but as both demand and activity remained high, the FAA kept them in place until 2001, when the high-density rule was phased out. But then again, O'Hare proved that it was ready for growth, and quickly, flights hit record levels. Additional flight caps were put on by FAA in 2004. FAA said, whoa, wait a minute, this airfield can't handle this much activity. And those flight caps stayed in place until 2008, when Chicago opened a new runway, 9 left. Open a new runway, you make gains. You see a pattern here. They opened and it allowed additional capacity in poor weather. Now, just to underscore the point, this is a global competition. Meanwhile, Dubai was taking on London by building an outrageously large terminal that could accommodate large, long-range aircraft. The Economist, back in June 2010, dubbed Dubai the rulers of the new Silk Road, recognizing the financial benefits possible by connecting the legacy east-west routes from North America to Asia and Europe to Asia, as well as by linking high-growth markets such as Asia to Africa and Asia to Latin America. While this flip in the top position didn't occur until 2013, the fact that it was going to happen was apparent to aviation experts starting in about 2004. You could see where it was headed. You don't have to wait for the scales to tip to know where it's headed. You got to stop that trend before it happens. So what are the original large hub legacy airports doing now to get ahead of this high-powered international competitive challenge? Most of them have developed and funded expensive long-term growth plans to invest, rebuild, and reconfigure their terminal and airfield assets to allow for larger, more efficient aircraft movement. Unfortunately, right now, Chicago has no comparable funded long-range plan. So how do we get one? By going to work. We're going to review the basis of the 2002 plans. We're going to consider new developments since that planning work was done. We're going to look at the long-term needs and the best overall layout and location to address them, and then we're going to look at short-term needs. We'll do this in close consultation with our airline partners. And then we estimate costs and prioritize the long-range plan. The final element of complexity for this plan is affordability. It must be affordable, and that means prioritizing investments, evaluating their benefit to airline operational costs, and foregoing unnecessarily or overly expensive alternatives. Give you another example. The Airbus 380 is a high-seat capacity, low-cost per-seat mile aircraft specifically designed for very long-distance flights. Think China. That allows the travelers to avoid multiple stops. This is one of the most significant developments in aviation in the past decade. When it was introduced in 2007, U.S. hubs immediately began to add 380 gates. Most U.S. international hubs are now on their second or third round of building additional A380 gates. And what about O'Hare? 0. We have approval. We're going to build one for next year. The moral of this story is that airports, to remain successful and competitive, must continually evolve to meet industry needs and consumer expectations. If you say you're done, then indeed you are done. You watch it slip away, as London seems to be. So, where exactly does O'Hare and Midway 2 stand these days? Do we have the airfield infrastructure necessary to be competitive, reliable, and attractive to travelers? Do we have the gate capacity to accommodate consumer demand? Are we efficiently delivering the capacity that our airline partners, all of them, require? Are we controlling costs and increasing the efficiency of our administrative processes to save those precious dollars for building the facilities that we need? And are we fully serving the needs of our passengers and maximizing the revenue potential possible by offering an excellent consumer experience? At present, the answer is mostly no, but we can and will do something about that. O'Hare is the only major U.S. gateway with runways in 3 directions. First and foremost, O'Hare's triangular runway pattern with runways in 3 directions has to go. It's inefficient, outdated, and frankly, not as safe a configuration. The 6 parallel runways in the primary orientation and 2 crosswind runway that address limitations associated with O'Hare's old airfield make sense. If you come to my office at O'Hare, I will show you a dozen airfields around the world, the most efficient airfields in the world, and they all look like that. It's virtually identical to Dallas-Fort Worth's highly acclaimed runway configuration, a layout that has earned the distinction of allowing the world's very first quadruple IFR arrivals, allowing for highest capacity possible during low visibility conditions. The O'Hare full runway system also provides for the highest efficiency in good weather, allowing up to 4 parallel streams of aircraft But beyond efficiency, these new parallel runways are essential for maximizing safety at our busy airport. This runway piece is absolutely vital for O'Hare. Now, what do we have today? This is what we have today. South half of the airfield looks pretty good. Linear, clean, efficient. The north half looks like we're still in the 1950s. Don't talk to me about being done. We're not done. Second, our terminals at O'Hare require serious attention. Why? We've seen the huge payoff from the modernization of T5 at O'Hare. A fabulous success story, Mayor. Thank you for showing us the way once again. There's been an 8% increase in passenger traffic, soaring food and retail sales growth of more than 69%. We've seen employment double in that terminal. And if you've been there, you know, wow, it's incredible. It's made international travel through Chicago an attractive option. Once again, it's great. What about the other terminals? And Midway, not so much. In a recent ranking of the top 30 U.S. airports by the 2014 Airport Revenue News Factbook in terms of both food, beverage sales, and retail, O'Hare and Midway rank at the bottom of the pack. The bottom. Midway's the bottom in both categories. Chicago's third from the bottom in both categories. It's just completely unacceptable. That's where we are. That's the revenue we need to build the facilities that we need to support efficient aircraft operations. And, by the way, to provide the customer service that people in Chicago especially appreciate. Since 2004, we've seen the number of carriers flying through Chicago increase from 37 to 43, even in the face of a major consolidation. And they require additional facilities, especially for lucrative international service, which is well known to have a major impact on Chicago's economy in terms of both business development and tourism. If we want to be able to take full advantage of all those carriers and routes, we must address the constraints on terminal capacity. So, what does this all mean? It means we have some serious work to do and some heavy lifting. And I am asking for your support because Chicago's airports are important to all of us, to our city, to the region, to the nation. I'm sure most of you saw that back in January, FAA statistics showed that O'Hare had reclaimed the busiest airport title from Atlanta Hartsfield. But there's a flip side. As many of you have experienced, Chicago also leads the way in delayed flights. This is where it's important to remember that we're in a consumer business and consumers have choices. If you're booking a coast-to-coast trip from the East Coast to the West Coast, those delays affect your booking time, and the airlines include that delay time in their schedule. So if they look at a flight and it's an hour and a half less time to fly through Denver than Chicago, they're going to pick Denver. We need to measure up. We need to be able to deliver on both capacity and consumer experience. And there's a cautionary tale to recovering the #1 position for aircraft operations from Atlanta. It was not because O'Hare grew. It was because Delta remobilized aircraft from Atlanta to Salt Lake City and Seattle. Delta's tripling their activity in Seattle because of Asia. They're going to deploy those planes where they're most profitable and where they can get the highest and best use of that expensive piece of equipment. Airlines view their hubs differently today, and make no mistake, we are in competition. The good news, and I mean very good news, is that we have a framework for continued improvements and modernization at O'Hare. We have the regulatory approvals, and we have a remaining federal funding commitment of $285 million for our runway system that will help us drive that future economic and job growth. We need a parallel 6-runway system to deliver the capacity to stand up to some heavy-duty competition. Further, we already have the broad regulatory approval for sorely needed priority projects such as gate expansion, airfield improvements, balanced landside access capacity, and the facilities and amenities required for long-term international growth potential. So we get to do the fun part. We get to build it. So to ensure that Chicago remains competitive, there are important issues that we need to address that relate to both capacity and the consumer experience. As of this summer, most of O'Hare's gate capacity is fully utilized, and increases in average aircraft size also impact gate availability. Both O'Hare hub carriers, United and American, are using larger aircraft and scheduling more pronounced peaks, which means more passengers and the need to provide additional holdroom seating. While other airports are improving, international arrival capacity is currently constrained at both O'Hare and Midway, and efficient and customer service international connectivity is vital for successful hub competition. We need folks to choose to hub in Chicago rather than do everything in their power to avoid it. We need airfield improvements that reduce delays, allow airlines to maximize performance, address weather challenges, and enhance system performance. With record growth continuing at Midway, and even though capacity exists for future growth, we have serious infrastructure challenges, including the need for more structured parking. Easy stuff. We know how to do concrete, right? This is Chicago. And at both O'Hare and Midway, our customers also need and deserve better signage, food and beverage choices, and retail options. And make no mistake, we are very mindful at the Department of Aviation of the imperative at both airports to be a good neighbor with an open mind and improved communication. So that's where things stand in terms of commercial aviation in Chicago. We're at a crossroads. Standing still is sliding backwards. If we want to reclaim Chicago's status among the very best and elite international and U.S. hubs, we must go out and earn it. I intend to work with all of you to accomplish just that. I was going to conclude with an inspirational quote, but you know, when I got to witness this parade, I mean, it was just unbelievable. It was just so inspiring. Like I said, I don't know a thing about hockey, but I got to tell you, even a layperson like me could see, what that team did. It wasn't until watching that last game really got my attention. But then, I'm a reader, so in reading the analysis afterwards, I learned that it wasn't that many years ago that the Blackhawks were looking a little bit worn around the edges, and quite a few empty seats at the United Center. And then I read that Rocky Wirtz, John McDonough, and Scotty and Stan Bowman decided they wanted to be number one, so they invested and modernized and improved both the team and the fan experience. We all have seen how well that turned out. Our initial task for Chicago Department of Aviation is to get the right resources in place for the challenge ahead, and that's what we are currently doing. So to the airport consultants here today, I say, bring us championship talent and focused dedication. I work every Sunday. I see who's there. I see who's not there. Don't tell the mayor. At my city council here, and I learned that he thinks I'm working 7 days a week. I'm only working 6 days a week. But we'll be at 7 days within 7 months. Bring us your best innovations. This is the time to step up. I'm telling you. If I'm missing something, tell me. If I'm off base, tell me. We don't have time to mess around. Airport concessions, I'm just talking for myself here. I don't want to hear about you going down to ask the mayor and city council what they can do for you. I suggest you ask, what can my company do for O'Hare and Midway customers today? What products, service, and technology can we bring to bear to improve service and revenue now? That's what I want to hear. I want to follow the lead of the Blackhawk management strategy so that I can stand here at another City Club event and share with you news of Chicago's renewed status as the world-class champion in aviation. Not just the busiest, but the best. Thank you.
Come on up, and let's give a thank you to Mayor Emanuel for coming this morning. Thank you, Your Honor. All right, Frank, get your questions up here. That's fabulous.
Thank you.
Other questions? Thank you very much for that very inspiring presentation and the challenges that are ahead for us. I'm going to do my best Paul Green imitation, though I'm certainly not Paul Green, been taken off the bench. From Dana Wasserman at Jacobs, are there any opportunities to improve O'Hare operations through technology? You've somewhat addressed that, but.
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of throughout the airport system, on the airfield, again, once we have the kind of civil infrastructure in place, we'll be continually working with FAA, and the airlines to make sure that they've got the technology they need, to improve arrivals. In the terminals themselves, I think that there are lots of needs. I travel a lot. I'm sure all of you travel a lot. And part of making those basic improvements in our shops is that there's got to be more technology interface with our customers. So we've got to be able to, give people better information. I can walk off a plane at Atlanta and find out, where I can get my nails done, 10 minutes away, and you've only got so much time. So we have a lot of technology needs that I think can be updated. The good news is that there's an awful lot of infrastructure that is in good shape, that has been done. We have a very good foundation to continue to add diversity to those technology offerings. And it's an area where actually I think the transfer of technology is coming into aviation. So we're looking for ideas and applications outside of aviation because that's where the cutting edge thoughts are. So bring them on.
Okay. Are there other questions? It looks like we just have one more. We're giving you
Good.
The rookie or the initial no gotcha, no traditional City Club sandbags. Max Beaver at ASGK has a question about parking. Parking at O'Hare is a big challenge, high rates, lack of spaces. What plans do you have to address these issues?
I'll be perfectly honest, I haven't actually looked at parking yet, except at Midway, where it's easy to look at because the structured parking is closed three days a week. Parking is a very important customer service amenity. It's also a very important source of non-airline revenue. So it's an important part of the system that keeps the terminals running. So finding that sweet spot of where's the demand? What are people willing to pay? What are offsite people, paying, and what does that do to our demand is a fairly complicated analysis. It costs a lot to park at an airport because airports are expensive facilities to run. That's just a reality, and there is a premium that you'll pay for the convenience of being closer to the terminal versus farther from the terminal versus being off airport. So it's something that has to be evaluated on an ongoing basis. I have not looked at the parking rates at O'Hare, but it's just part of the business to do that. I will tell you this. Everybody wants everything, and there are some factors that kind of compete against each other. It is clear to me that Midway is underpriced. And we can't add structured parking until we raise the parking rates. That's the only way we'll be able to finance additional structured parking. But if you say to me, isn't it bad customer service to raise rates? I say to you, it's really bad customer service to have your parking lot closed 3 days a week because it's full. So that's an indication of that there's unmet demand, and you got to meet it. So yes.
Do you have a question?
Well, there's a complicated set of issues in your question. There's no question that Dubai, deliberately, built a competitor hub for transcontinental airport. They've had tremendous growth, and they do have a strong geographic position. But they also provided, infrastructure that allowed that hubbing traffic to happen. And if you think of, you saw on the slide, I mean, no snow, no volcanoes. Relatively low labor rates. They do have some advantages. There's no question about that. And I will tell you, I was in London about 18 months ago to meet with the mayor's staff, and it's a grave concern to them. And you saw the price tag for the capital program at London. That's for one runway. That $38 billion that you saw for London, that's one runway and some associated roadways. London, trust me, wants to build that runway. It isn't clear that they're going to be able to. They feel like they have to stay in the game. So there's no question of a huge threat. And Dubai's not done. They're building a new airport, Jebel Ali, that'll open in about 4 years. So that's an even bigger threat. Right now, the airport planner at Dubai told me a couple of years ago that their constraint right now at the existing Dubai airport is the VSR, the vehicle service roads. They can't load the aircraft fast enough with food. And so, they didn't really contemplate quite the level of growth that they've had. But it's, just that global context of what it takes to be competitive is just, the perspective that I wanted to give everybody. So, well, thank you.
No. Thank you very much, Mr. O'Hare.